Mr. Gougé and ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube watching public, welcome to the Monday Market Update. My name is Sean Grapevine. I'm the Vice President of Strategy here at UMortgage, and I'm joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, none other than Matt, the mortgage guy, Gougé, former poker dealer, current mortgage dealer, and always dealing hope and optimism as well. Matt, how was your weekend? How are you doing?
My weekend was busy, and it is true. I'm always trying to deal hope and optimism because I think there's a lot to be hopeful and optimistic about, which we'll talk about later. More inventory for people to choose from. But this weekend was jam-packed. Swim meet Friday night. Did this flag delivery. What do you call this thing? Me and a realtor partner for going on 8 years combined, but he's been doing it for 15, putting American flags in the yards of 2,200 plus homes in our neighborhood. If it sounds cool, Sean, you got to see it to believe it. It is so cool. Like, I went to something last night in the neighborhood and everybody was like, driving through the neighborhood is so cool. There's flags waving on everyone's lawn. And we got a pretty cool neighborhood, bunch of kids like all do swim team together. They play on the same baseball league. They go to school together. And so like there was this court party last night. Shout out to the Thralls for throwing that thing.
What's up, Thralls? Thanks for tuning in.
yeah. Thanks to the Thralls. But I love that, getting the feedback from neighbors, how much they love it. And let me tell you one story. I'm a long-winded fella, but I got to tell this story.
Please. This sounds great.
Every year I do this. The route that I do, the 120, 140 flags that me and my sons put in the ground kind of varies because we get volunteers to do these 2,200 flags, and I kind of just go do it where I'm needed, right? So I get to do that, and on a Saturday morning, there might be some people outside. People are going to and fro, errands or whatever they're doing. One of my favorite parts of this, Sean, is just talking to neighbors, people that I've lived near, vicinity wise for all my life. 44 years I've lived in this neighborhood. This time I had one of the coolest conversations I've ever had. Ruth told me about her husband, who was in the Marines, proud veteran, served in the Korean War. He passed away the end of 2021. He loved this tradition so much. It made him so proud to be a veteran, proud to be an American. And so her telling me the story and seeing how happy it made her, like, you can't help but well up a little bit in the eye.
Yeah, tears. Yeah, I got goosebumps.
So then the last third of the route, I got to talk to my boys about like, hey guys, it's hot outside. We're sweating. They were complaining about their tired feet. Like, what about Ruth's husband who signed up, to go serve in a war, right? Like, that's hard, guys. And so my sons got some immediate perspective, little life lesson. And I know that like 5 minutes with Ruth was impactful because my son later like went and told my wife about like, oh, guess who we met today, Mom? Ruth.
No way.
Wow. Served in the Marines, and really, really cool stuff. So more than just mortgages, man. Spreading joy, happy, and getting ready for the 4th of July this week.
I love it. I love the 4th of July. It's one of my favorite holidays. And for all the sort of tension that exists in our country year to year, decade to decade, it's always such it's like, it feels like a joyous holiday. And one where people kind of like finally put aside like we're Americans. So anyway, that's our patriotic start to
patriotic start. What about your weekend, brother? I know you booked something for next weekend. What'd you do this weekend that just passed?
Let's see. I got in my last long run before a big 10K that I run every 4th of July. So I got in a 10 miler on Saturday. The Tour de France started this weekend, and that's basically like a long Christmas for me. I love cycling. I love watching pro cycling. It's so boring. The plot line, it's like a soap opera on wheels that occurs over 2,500 miles of France, and actually it started in Italy this year. And I'm crushing my fantasy league. Absolutely. Like,
fantasy, like cycling. Oh my gosh, man. You're really into it. Well, you know what? I'm glad I get to learn more about Sean Grapevine on these things. Mortgage is cool. Learning that Sean Grapevine is in a fantasy cycling league and just loves cycling.
You know who's a big Tour de France fan? Anthony J. Costa. I don't know what his middle initial is. Anthony Costa.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, he's like sending me spoilers and stuff in like the middle of that Saturday. I'm like, you gotta hold it in here. Don't send me these spoilers yet. Yeah, really great addition so far. And my voice is scratchy from screaming at a soccer match on Saturday night. It was a full weekend.
Nice.
Speaking of full things, we've got a full agenda to speak of, and something that is filling is the inventory. Supposedly, I'm not quite as rosy-eyed about it as you are. I consider myself quite the optimist, but you always seem to outmatch me. Let's quickly kind of go over the numbers from last week, and then we'll go over we'll talk about inventory and how we as professionals can sort of overcome some of these inventory issues. So if we could pull up the numbers real quick to our executive producer here. Thank you, sir. You'll see interest rates unchanged, Matt, which is insane because we got incredible PCE news last week. PCE is the Fed's core inflation measure. It looks just like CPI. And that's what their goal of 2% is. And it came in at 2.6. Core PCE came in at 2.7, a tenth of a point below expectations, at 0.2 of a point below last month. And the market didn't react. Rates went up on Friday. The jobless numbers kept creeping up as well on Thursday, which is good news-ish. Good news for people who like bad news. Really strange that rates are sort of staying high here. We've got pretty much unchanged expectations about rate changes here. In fact, a slight lessening of a rate reduction for the upcoming July 31st meeting, just a bit, but it's very confusing to me because we got a bunch of good news last week. So
there's no rhyme or reason, but yeah.
There really isn't. We'll make our way through these. We're really targeting. It looks like traders are thinking that in September we'll have our first rate cut of possibly 2 this year. I still think, as I constantly mention, only 1 rate cut this year. No chance that there's 2. But if you look at some of these numbers, we'll go all the way through them. If you look at like the December ones, some people are pricing in 3, and some people are pricing in 4 rate cuts this year. I think that's absolutely insane. And this is coming from a guy who's absolutely crushing it in fantasy Tour de France against 7 other people. So my predictive powers are
pretty high,
pretty high, at least in the top 12.5% of Tour de France predictors. So thoughts on I think we should log it's the beginning of Q3. It's the beginning of the second half of the year. I want to hear what's your official, you can't change it, prediction for this year on rate cuts.
2 cuts, and I'm sticking to it. It's a relatively safe bet. I think 1 and 2 are the favorites. Then anything outside of that is a little bit wild, like the little sliver you see on the 4 rate cut predictions, but 2 rate cuts in 2024. That's my prediction. I'm sticking to it.
2. I'm at 1. 2 sounds reasonable. That's kind of where people are kind of agree with you. Traders agree with you, but they're always wrong. If you look at just a month ago, 475, there was only a 33% chance of 2. So I don't really know. I mean, maybe those good numbers actually have had an effect. But one of the things that a slightly reduced, well, significantly reduced demand in mortgages as a result of high rates has done is it's finally started to drive up inventories. But that being said, Mr. Gougé, it looks a lot better than all of 2023. This is where we're at right now. This is actually May, so June numbers haven't come in yet. And looking better than all of 2023 and some of 2022, and basically none of the first 9 months of in some of 2021. But if you go back to just like right when COVID started, you'll see like we're nowhere near that. And then if you go back to like 2019, and we can zoom out a little bit here, it's like here's where we are. People are like inventory's getting better, and it's like yeah, but I mean.
Yeah, look, yeah, you got to zoom out a little bit. And just for anybody watching who's like, what am I looking at? Why is it up, down, up, down, up, down? Like historically speaking, you can see it's a clear pattern. February, March, April, May, really busy months. People are buying up homes because they're moving more than any other time of the year. And so that's where we've got the trough, and there's not a lot for sale because what is for sale is being purchased really quick. And then you get the November, December, January months where not a lot of movements going on, not a lot of people are moving, and inventory's higher because inventory is also a reflection on how much is being purchased. If a house doesn't sell, it's
Inventory.
Like inventory. And then new homes come on the market that get added to this inventory. That's what people kind of confuse too, is they think like inventory equals how many homes are brought to market. Well, homes to market is part of it. But if homes sit 15 days, 30 days, 45, they're part of that number of active inventory. And so when homes are selling less fast and there's less demand, like there is in the winter months, pretty much all markets, like inventory is going to rise. So it rises in the winter months. It decreases in the summer months when there's a bunch of action. I like this, and looking at this from a national level, I've got my Sacramento stuff pulled up and it follows the same pattern, right? It just might be a little bit different where like those big peaks, 22 and 23, like for people that weren't paying attention to mortgage interest rates, like in 22, when rates were up to 8% in Q4, like my market, the inventory was triple what it is like today. I'm looking at quick numbers, maybe triples an overestimation. It was double what it is today. And then like,
yeah, 20, and you can see the shape of 2023 doesn't really match with any other year. It was so sort of like there were so many reasons that inventory was messed up. It was like rates were super high, but inventory was low, and inflation was high. So it's like it's also a measure of of equity too. So one of the reasons people feel comfortable moving is when they have a lot of equity. So we're in that situation right now. Unfortunately, and I think as even one of the commenters, well, I don't know if this is unfortunate. Coincidentally, a lot of people with a lot of equity also have incredibly low interest rates, which they don't want. So they're waiting out, the high interest rate environment, or not even waiting out. Maybe they just literally can't afford it, even with the equity they have. So you get this really weird shape in 2023 as like all of these forces are like pulling against each other. But you see, it's been a pretty straight shot for the first 5 months of 2024, going upwards though. Again, not as high as the highest points of any previous year other than last year.
Right. Yeah. We're not even in the ballpark of historically normal inventory levels, which maybe we'll have to go back to 2019 to have any sense of like what normal looks like.
Yeah. And I mean, I think another thing to consider is like more people are in the home buying age bracket now than in 2019. So we would really like an adjusted, what we'd really need is where you see about 1.9 million right here. like the 2024 version of that might be, 2.05. Like it might be a little bit higher even than just to match it. So yeah, really low. And I think this tells me a few things. This tells me that even though housing prices are high, we're not about to be out of a hyper competitive market anytime soon. Like no chance. Like prices aren't going down, and price increases are probably going to be annoyingly sticky. I mean, even if you look at, if I was looking at the Atlanta numbers, the Atlanta days on market is like 6 times higher than it was in the middle of 2020. But that means that it's at 30 days instead of 5. And that is still 15 days less than it was in 2019, like which we talked about last week. Like 2019 was a healthy market. Most of the people we know had their best years in 2019 prior to the successive years. And so I think a lot of people are like, are we in a bubble? Like, are these housing, like, are prices going to start going up less quickly? I mean, they might start going up a little bit less quickly, but they're certainly not going to revert to that 2 to 3% per year increase. I mean, I think you're in the 5+% increase in housing prices well into the next few years, because this is a decade long, like we kind of got ourselves into this mess over a decade, and it's going to take a decade to get us, like, it takes a long time to build and finance a house. And I think we're going to be stuck in this inventory issue for a long time.
Yeah. And I listen to smart people talk, and they remind me that, like, when interest rates go up and there's less people selling resale homes, and so it causes kind of this inventory crux. What also happens, which makes it even harder, is that builders build less in high interest rate environments. They're building less in a high interest rate environment where, like, we need the inventory more than ever. If the hope was, hey, we're not going to see 3% rates ever again, but maybe we'll see a 10 or 15% reduction in the home prices, that will help affordability. Well, you can't have that without a lot of inventory coming to market, and, like, it's not coming. You can see starts. You can look at, like, a lot of indicators that would tell you if 2025 and 2026 was going to have a bunch of new inventory. Spoiler alert, like, it won't. It's not. There's not, like, a crazy number of what they call starts, which is 2 years out from the home actually being built and ready for you to purchase.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And so, I mean, I think that, like, that is an inducement to buy, honestly, now, because it's like, yeah, rates might not be great, but at least, like, you're going to be getting this instant equity for a long time that's going to outpace inflation, because like, housing prices right now aren't really affected too much by inflation as much as they are just by the restricted inventory. Whenever you have this restriction of supply, obviously, the price gets pushed up. And if you look at that 10-year one, the sort of historical, like, story behind this, which I love, that kind of, going back, like, why are we in the position we are, is, this number, if you go back even further, I should have clicked the max button here, but, like, it's even higher. And the highest point is obviously in 2009, when bankruptcies and foreclosures as a result of the 2008 financial crisis were at their absolute highest. And there was a long time. I mean, I remember some of the last foreclosures and short sales from the crisis being snapped up off the Atlanta market in, like, 2015, 2016. So there's this long period where it was like, why build a house? Why build a new house if you're a builder, if there's still this, like, lagging sort of softness in the market due to all these houses that, like, haven't been bought, that are, like, undervalued or need fixing up, or like that are good deals. Like, why would anybody pay $400,000 for a brand new house when they could pay $270,000 for a house that is in some level of distress, and then fix it up? So there wasn't this, like, big builder apparatus that like, builders weren't very active. They hadn't scaled up. Like, a lot of them had gone out of business or merged, and they were kind of running at a low hum. And now that inventory is down, now it makes sense to build a house, because you can get, like, fat profit margins off of them, honestly. And we're just nowhere near the capacity we need to be. That takes a long time to manufacture a home.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. And yeah, that's something we haven't talked about a lot, but just quickly, right? Like 2010, 11, 12, stuff sold for less than its the cost to rebuild it. And so, of course, builders aren't building because the
Exactly.
product they were building was selling for less than it cost to build the thing. But like that just created this humongous shortage, which we haven't caught up. Different outlets call it, you know, 1 million. Some call it 2 million. Some call it 4 million. And like inventory that's needed from a housing perspective. And like you mentioned too, that demographic 34 to 36 or whatever you want to call it for like the average age of the first time home buyer, higher than ever, only increasing. And so like all of these signs that point towards there's nothing. And I think even the Fed overestimated what impact they could have by increasing interest rates. Because you can do whatever you want with interest rates when there's demand for a product, even a little bit dampened demand, and there's not a lot of supply of that product.
Right.
Like,
And when that product is on the top of, you know, the hierarchy of needs, shelter, like when it's like people's like most important expense, they're going to have to go get it somewhere. Nobody's
100.
like, you know what? I'll just no home this year.
Right. Yeah.
I'll save up.
Yeah. It's a need.
So Matt, what do you do for your clients and your agents? So like, I want to talk about this from like, what can we do in our little microcosms to mitigate the issue of low inventory? So what causes do low inventory cause? Well, it means that buyers who need every reason in the world to buy right now can get fatigue, right? Offer fatigue. They might have to put in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, they have to go to open houses that are just chock full of people. They have to compete with cash buyers. And they also have to watch, you know, the value of their dollar reduce, you know, the longer they wait. So what can we as professionals, let's start with loan officers, then we can talk about agents, but like, what can we as loan officers do to like be on team buyer, team agent and mitigate this inventory squeeze?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things. And, you know, for buyers listening or agents or other loan officers, like, when someone's in the market to buy a house and they tell me or they tell their agent, like, we want to buy, the best thing you can do for them is give them honest feedback on here's what it's going to take. Different markets behave different. You can look and the data's out there. Great agents know this. Great agents have a feel for this because they're in the market. But being honest with a buyer is the best thing you can do. They get pre-approved with me. They know exactly what the numbers look like. Here's what it looks like at 600. Here's what it looks like at 625. Their agent is a good enough agent, confident in themselves to tell the buyer on this property, like 610 is not going to do it. The agents will go out and get the information, talk to the listing agent. What's important to your seller? Do they need to close in 18 days? Do they need rent back? What do you think about, you know, like how many offers do you have in? And so the information gets drawn from the list side. We've already got offers that are 620 plus. It's important to my seller. Like they want to move on. So the faster you can close it, the better. We don't need any rent back. All this information helps the buy side agent craft a great offer. And then the buy side agent tells buyer, okay, buyer, like if you really want this house, I think we got to go 625. We got to go 625. We've got to shorten our loan and appraisal contingencies. Maybe we got to remove one of them. We've got to close in 18 days. Literally went through all of this, Sean. Buyer that me and an agent had in a market that I know very well because I've lived in this place for 44 years, offered 621. And man, we thought that was good. My agent was actually upset because he's usually able to extract and squeeze more info from the list side. List side was a little bit tight-lipped. Didn't get it, right? And so the crazy part is there's almost a tale of two markets. And I talked to great agents about this, had good conversations last week. This home was like great street, very well taken care of, in great shape, priced well. Like we knew it was going to be competitive. There's going to be a lot of people and we're going to have to like figure out what it was going to take. There might be a home 4 blocks over, different layout, worse condition, not as good of a street, that's been on the market for 27 days. If you're a buyer, you might not see those differences. You're like, this neighborhood, that thing sat for 27 days. I can take my time on this.
Sure. Yeah.
This house is different. And what do you know? Like the agent who knew the market really well was correct. It's going to be competitive. We're going to have to come up in the 620s. We came up 621. That wasn't even enough, right? And so I think my best advice to buyers is find an agent and a lender you like and trust. And trust is important because you're going to have to follow their advice. If you don't want to be the person who's put in 9 offers and not got a house, you don't want to be the person that's like reevaluating in early 25 about, should I even buy? This is really tough. It's probably because you didn't get enough good advice, or you got the advice and you didn't follow it.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the Grapevine keys to success when putting in a good offer. First of all, work with an LO and agent who know the market, obviously. Number 2 is get totally underwritten in advance. Do a TBD underwrite. That means get totally underwritten in advance. That means there's no financing contingency on your loan. You can come to the table already totally underwritten, no need for financing contingency, which means that the seller doesn't have to wait to make sure that you're approved, which means that like there's less time of unknowing, which is what sellers are trying to avoid. And then work with your loan officer, your UMortgage loan officer, maybe like Matt, the mortgage guy Gougé, to have them call the listing agent and tell the listing agent exactly what that means. Like hype up your TBD, your pre-underwrite, to be like, hey, this is I used to do that, and they'd be like, hey, how qualified? I would call the listing agent. They'd say, hey, how qualified is this person? And I was like, I would say anything for my client. I would bet the house on this person. I'm like, this client is the kind of client that loan officers dream of. I can't really share anything with you about their credit score or anything like that, but like this is like, this walked across my desk and I would do it for free. Honestly, it's going to be so easy. No matter what, because you know what, I'm never going to be like, well, it's going to be a hard one. Especially if I've already underwritten it. Like if I've underwritten it and it's approved, then I'm like, that approval is as good for an 800 credit score as it is for 650. So, really, I would say that the key to success are having a loan officer who will call your listing agent for you, work hand in hand with the buyer, with your agent, and discuss the appraisal gap strategy. We can't really go into that all the way right now, but if you're putting down anything more than 5%, 10% preferably, there's a great strategy that you can use that, a lot of sellers will see like, oh, well, what if the appraisal, like, oh, I see you're offering 620, but what if the appraisal comes in at 600? We have a plan for that. So definitely reach out to your UMortgage loan officer. They should all be familiar with that little trick. And yeah, you just gotta you gotta create the story, right? You gotta have people going to bat for you as a buyer, which means your loan officer calling a listing agent, your loan officer talking with your real estate agent, making sure that all your contingencies are as small as possible, that you've got a good appraisal gap strategy. And if you do all that, I was talking to somebody a couple days ago and they were like, yeah, I was talking to this loan officer. He says he has 65 active pre-approvals and just nobody gets their offer accepted. And I was like, oof, that's not a market issue. That's a hole in your game, bro.
Yeah.
You're messing up.
I had an agent locally, Sean, that used to, he would really prep buyers really well and tell them like, listen, you want to buy? Let me show you the way, like follow me and you will win. He batted something like 850. The dude got like 8.5 out of 10 offers accepted on the first try. Like there's clients out there, if you've put in 9 or 10 offers you haven't got accepted, you're not getting good advice, or you're getting it and you're
not following it. Yeah.
It's one of those two things. It has to be, right? Because great agents who know their market and know how to prepare their clients, like, and that's the good news for buyers, is that I've talked to many, many agents. I've had hundreds of agent conversations. Even if you hear a place has 10 offers, know that 7 or 8 of those offers suck. So if you're working with a great agent, if you're getting great advice, and you should
be batting at least 50%, 100%.
You should be one of 2 or 3 good offers, right? With great agent, great lender, lenders calling. Still, it blows my mind. This has been told for years, having the lender communicate with the sell side. And I still get like, thank you so much for calling. There's 4 offers. You're the only lender I've spoke to. And I'm like, winning.
That's right? Crazy. Yeah. I know. I'm like, guys, we get paid an inordinate amount of money to do this. Like the least you could do is spend 5 minutes telling your counterparty in the transaction that like you're worth working with. So,
oh my gosh, it's 9 a.m. I want to get to this question real quick because Jay Homeboy joined. I don't know if he's still here, but
Jay Homeboy, welcome to the show. Thanks for sticking around.
This is a great question. My wife and I closed on our home in June of 23. We have 2 kids under 2. Congrats on the kiddos. Those are fun. Turned in our 2-week notice to watch the kids. He's like, no, honey, don't do it. We got to refinance under 6.25. What are my options? And then the follow-up from Jay Homeboy was 7.5% with a 1-1 buy down. So if I understand it correctly, 6.5 in year 1 and in year 2. And then you've got 7.5 starting not until 2025 after you've been in this loan for 2 years. So should I continue paying more than the minimum? The kudos on being 50 grand ahead, refinance or pay off the mortgage. Well, she's already put in her 2 weeks. So having your wife on loan is kind of like, that's something we got to forget about. But here's the good news, Jay Homeboy. I think that if you're already 50 grand ahead and you're in a position where you're chunking away at this mortgage, like principal balance, future date, 5.5% interest rate, lower principal balance, the payment hopefully comes down enough where you might qualify just you. And the way mortgage qualification works, I want it to. If you're the only one working and like, you know, you needed this income to qualify, but then she's going to stop working, like that's not good for you. We want it to be where this mortgage is going to be less than 40% of your pay on a monthly basis. And, you know, so to qualify, it's going to have to be a feasible mortgage. And I hope that with a lower principal balance and a lower rate, that's going to happen. You've got this low 6.5% until mid 25. So I think you're good there. Just keep an eye on when it's going to go from 6.5 to 7.5 in the middle of 25, where rates are at. And hopefully they're a place where between your lower balance.
I think you've timed it perfectly, Jay Homeboy. I think Matt's spot on. Like you're going to coast right into a perfect opportunity to refinance. And I wouldn't do anything. Refinances they're not free, you know, no matter what anybody tries to tell you through a scammy mailer. It's so you know, you definitely want to make sure you don't want to do it too early. And I mean, if you're already crushing your payment like that, I wouldn't recast. It's not, there's no real, you know, gain to that other than it might help your cash flow, which doesn't really seem like you need help with. So I'm with Matt. Just wait it out. Give Matt a call, get an application in so that he can kind of constantly refresh it to see when it's a good time to strike. And he'll get licensed whatever state you're in. He promises.
I promise. Yeah, I got to run though. This is getting too long.
You're the one. You did that.
I got a 9 a.m. I know. When I talk long, it's okay. When Sean talks long, we got to cut the show off. Get him out of here. We got to roll next Monday, buddy. I'll see you then.
See you, buddy. Have a great happy 4th of July.